Hello everybody. Movie review next door here, and it is very hot here. Our AC is broken, and hopefully we'll get it fixed tomorrow. So I'm probably not gonna keep this super long or anything. But I'm back with the Substitute series in honor of Treat Williams, rest in peace, with The Substitute 3, Winner Takes All. This film is from 1999, directed by Robert Radler, and it stars Treat Williams, Rebecca Staub, Claudia Christian, James Black, Frank Garish, and Richard Portnow. Now, in this film, at a college visit to a War Buddies professor daughter, mercenary Carl Thomason finds her brutally beaten. He then poses as a teacher to teach a lesson to the football jocks responsible. So, what do I think of this film? I do still think it's the weakest in the series. Last time I saw it and reviewed it was about 10 months ago, I think, and I gave it a 6. I bumped that up to a 7 because I do think there's some decent action here. I do wish that a bit more was done with certain plot points, and I do wish certain plot points didn't. I wish certain scenes didn't go on so long. But let me get to the cast. Treat Williams, he's great as Carl Thomason. I think he's a little bit better than he was in the second film, though he was still good in the second film. He works as this character. He is believable as a mercenary. Still good in the fight scenes. Rebecca Staub as Nicole Stewart. She's daughter of a buddy of his who died, and he's like trying to like make it up to her. Apparently she doesn't act in a lot of like normal theatrical movies. She's in a lot of Lifetime, Hallmark type films, which I'm not gonna like get on somebody for. She was also in TNT, which is another film from this director, which I will get to the director. But she was fine. Claudia Christian is Andy. I do wish she was utilized more, because I do really like her in this role. I like when tough female characters are written well and are like utilized well. And there are probably some people who would say like, oh, she's objectified in that one scene in the bar, and I wouldn't say that at all. I think if since it was an undercover thing, it's not like she was raped on screen or anything. Like, she was in a wet t-shirt contest, and I bet there's some dummy on Letterboxd that's like, oh, that's objectifying women, even though she's undercover and she agreed to do this. Because she's a mercenary. And sometimes women have to do not the best things when they're spies or mercenaries or whatever. Read up on it. But Claudia Christian works in this role. I haven't seen a lot of the stuff she's known for. She's known for Babylon 5. She's known for Star Hike, I think. She was in Atlantis: The Lost Empire, The Hidden, The Chase, Maniac Cop 2. I have seen Maniac Cop 2. I love Maniac Cop 2. But yeah, she works in the film. I do wish she got to kill a few more guys, but whatever. James Black is Ramel. He's kind of the black samurai character. He's fun. I like seeing characters using swords. It's nice to see. Frank Garish is Ed Lincoln. He's a friend who's kind of a hacker. He does surveillance. Like they'll get cameras implanted, and he has like a van that he runs the cameras out of. You've seen this type of character in other movies, especially action movies. He works in the film. He's fun. And Richard Portnow as Vincent LaRusso. He's fine. He's kind of the main villain, and he's part of the issue with this film. One of the issues I have with this film, but he's fine. He's kind of just generic villain. But yeah, with this film, part of the things that keep me from having this on the same level as even the second film are the I just wish so much that these films like tried to do something a bit more different. Yes, this film doesn't have like an inner city school like the first or second films. It's moved over to a college and football players getting by through classes without having to have good grades, which that is a real thing that happens in real life. It is a true thing. And they're using steroids because the coach is like buying illegal steroids and juicing them up so that they can win each game, which that is a real thing that happened. I think it happened back at one of my high schools I went to. Maybe it was Clinton High or maybe it was Hopton too, but I'm not outing any names. I don't know for sure, but I get the feeling that Clinton, they were using some of them. That's just allegedly. I just heard from people that it happened, and I was like, doesn't surprise me. But it was kind of a trashy school, to be honest. So was Hopton. But anyways, this kind of plot could work, but here's the thing. I kind of wish that the coach was the main villain, because he has way more screen time than than Vincent LaRusso, who ends up being the main villain. He's like kind of he feels like a shoved in villain when you have this character who's already like not got a lot of screen time, but he's definitely got more screen time than Vincent. And the way that the coach goes out kind of feels unsatisfying, because like he knows what he's doing. He took the easy way out, and it's like it just feels so cheap. It doesn't feel earned. I feel like if you knew more about the character, if there was like a backstory to why he's doing this or something, it would have added some weight. But this film seems to have a bit of an issue, not pacing wise. It's not like it's boring. There is one scene that I want to talk about that goes on way too long. It goes on for like a full 7 minutes at least. It's the scene where Claudia Christian as Andy, she comes in like halfway through the movie, and she goes undercover as like a waitress at this, not titty bar, but a sports bar. And she does good undercover. The issue is they show so much of it, and they show a lot of stuff that's not plot relevant. Like this group of guys hitting on her, which one of the guys does factor into the plot. It's just that, again, how he exits the movie is very unsatisfactory, and we barely know anything about him. And in the second film, you at least knew something. No, in the first film, you knew quite a bit about the villain. And it was maybe a surprise to some people halfway through when they realized who the villain was. The issue with the second and third films is that the villains are kind of they're either super obvious or out of nowhere. And I wish if a film is going to do a twist thing like that, or if it's not even going to try to have a twist, just give us the villain at the beginning of the film. Have it be like, okay, like they're nice in the first scene, literally the next scene they're doing something bad. I would rather that, because it wouldn't feel like, oh, they're messing around, they're wasting time. And this film does waste more time than the second one did. The second one, I can't think of many scenes I would just like outright take out. But in this one, again, the scene goes on. It's like, oh, Claudia Christian, she's like hitting on the guy, and the guy's like, oh, her boobs aren't fake. Oh, her boobs are fake. No, they aren't. I say they're real. And you could tell that these guys are like scared of this other guy. And she comes over, and then there's like a deal gone bad, and then there's a wet t-shirt contest for like 2 straight minutes, and it just kind of feels unneeded. Like, it's not even that I'm saying it's like sexist or anything. I don't care. Actors are actors. If they're professional, they do that. It's not like the actresses that do that type of stuff are just doing it to do. Like, you can choose to say no and walk off the set if you can't do what you gotta do. But like, Claudia Christian seems like a trooper. She went through it. That's cool. But it's also cool to know your limits. But it's not even that I think it's like objectifying or anything. I hate that word because it gets so overused in the dumbest of contexts. It's just the scene didn't need to be so long. You could have easily cut that out, or at least like had quick flashes of it. You did not need to show it in its entirety. It kind of feels like this film doesn't have enough plot for an hour and a half. And if it was cut down to like 80 minutes, I think it would have flowed better. I think it would have worked out better. Cut out the entire t-shirt contest thing. There's... You don't even really get to know a lot of the students, which in the first film, they made a conscious effort to get you to know these students. You felt like you knew them. You knew what their problems were. And in the second film, they do that with basically one character, which I did have an issue there. I just did mention it because spur of the moment kind of review style. But in the first film, you got to know about the one kid that's I think brother got hit in a drive-by. You got to know about the girl whose life isn't going well. You got to... You even grew to like these characters who were assholes at the beginning. And in the second film, they didn't really do that. At the end, it's like, oh, he made up with this gang, but you don't even really get much respect from them. And in this third one, the only people you really get to know at all are the jocks who hurt the woman. And it kind of feels like this film doesn't even... You didn't even really need this to be in the same series. Other than him being a substitute, it doesn't really connect that much. The second film connected quite a bit because it felt like it was trying to straight up just redo the first film, which it's okay. I'm okay with that to a point, but when you redo it multiple times, it just kind of fizzles out and becomes not special like the first film was. The first film was like something of a one-of-a-kind thing. It's like Dangerous Minds, but actually good and believable. Yeah, I fucking believe Michelle Pfeiffer as a Marine. It's like 187, but good. I haven't seen The Principal. I'd like to see The Principal. But, like, the first film is something special. I do think it even though, like, people at the time, like, didn't go to see it in the theater, I would just chalk that up to shitty marketing. Because with the cast it had, I don't see why people wouldn't go to see it. But the first film was something special, and these sequels, for the most part, are, like, fine. I just wish they did more of their own thing. It feels like they're all trying to recapture the first film. But, like... There was one other character you got to know that, like, sat in the front row, and when the female teacher was there, he made passes at her and stuff. I kind of wish that they went more into that character and, like, gave him a bit more of an arc before he dies. Because his death kind of feels like you kind of shrug because you don't know enough about the character. You don't really feel like you've experienced anything about the character. He's just kind of, wow, he's the student that looks a bit too old to be in college, and he's making passes as teacher. Wow. he didn't look too much older. Most of the actors look college age. But yeah, I just wish they focused more on the student portion, because in the first Substitute, you really feel like these students understand that their lives aren't going in the best directions. In the second film, you get a little smidge of that, and then in the third one, I don't feel it at all. I don't feel like they're paying attention. The scenes feel a bit more preachy and less clever. In the second film, there was the scene that I put at the front of the review, and it got copyright claimed, whatever, who cares, where he's using the yo-yo, and he was like, back in Vietnam, the yo-yo was used as a weapon. I didn't know that. And that was a really cool scene. He breaks the bottle, he, like, almost hits the one guy in the face and talks about perception. That was a clever scene, and I really liked it. This film really doesn't have that. it has a scene where he's like, "Oh, you underestimate the enemy," and he just basically beats up a student, and it's not really clever. It just feels like, oh, he wanted an excuse to beat up the students. And the scene near the end where he talks about steroids after the one student dies using steroids and crushes himself with the weights feels very preachy, because that's all he's talking about. He's not trying to, like, spin it in some way, or not spin it, but like use a clever way of giving the information. He just basically says, your classmate's dead, this is what steroids can do to you. He just lists it off. And while Treat Williams can definitely elevate the kind of muddy dialogue, he still can only do so much. I do still like Treat Williams in this. I do. I'm not gonna lie there. But yeah, I just wish this film did more of its own thing. When it gets to the action, it's fine. It's not as good as the second film's action. The second film's action, while still not perfect, there were scenes where I noticed certain things, like when BD Wong shot the teacher in the stomach. You hear the gun go off 3 times, and you don't see the gun actually the slide rack back, which does kind of annoy me. I kind of wish it was just off screen if you don't have a prop that actually does that. But other than that, the second film's action was at least semi-engaging. There were plenty of squibs. It was nice and violent at times. This film, it still does have squibs, and it's decently violent. It just kind of feels cheap in a way. There are times where you hear a ton of rounds being fired, and you don't really see them in the walls. And in the second film, they made a conscious effort to try to do that. So it does kind of feel like a step down. So I don't hate this film. I still think it's decent. It's decent enough. I think Treat Williams and Claudia Christian do quite a bit of heavy lifting at points, because without them, it could have easily been just an okay. But yeah, guess the pros and cons again: Treat Williams, Claudia Christian, James Black, Rebecca Staub, Frank Garish, all do good jobs. The direction from Robert Radler, who I almost forgot to mention. He directed Best of the Best and Best of the Best 2 with Eric Roberts and Philip Ree, which I have not seen yet. I know there are 4 films in that series. He did Showdown with Billy Blanks and Patrick Kilpatrick, who is in Substitute 4, which is directed by Robert Radler, and he also did TNT, starring Olivia Gruner, Eric Roberts, Randy Travis, Rebecca Staub. Pretty nice cast there. Sam J. Jones. But yeah, it seems like he predominantly does kind of action films, which is cool, and maybe I'll check out some of his other work soon. But his direction, for the most part, is fine. The score from Tor Hyams is decent. I don't think it's as good as the second film. The second film had more of the wailing guitars and the kind of rappy influence, and it felt very 90s, and I like that style of soundtracks, except for the first film. But both the second and third films' soundtracks are better than the first films, because the first films feels too experimental with the MIDI instruments that they obviously used. The action's fine. Cons, again, the villain, played by Richard Portnow, is very underdeveloped. He doesn't feel much like a character. He feels like a cartoon, and it doesn't really fit with this film that's trying to be down to earth. The first and second film villains felt more down to earth with what they were doing, and that's what made them a bit more scary, even though the second film's villain is still a bit underdeveloped. But this film easily has the weakest villain. I remember Patrick Kilpatrick being a lot better in the fourth film. But yeah. Again, I wish... I don't even know if I want more action. I just want better action during the shootout scenes. The hand-to-hand scenes with Treat Williams and all the football players or whatever are well done. They are. I kind of wish there were more of those than the shooting scenes, because I do love a good shootout. I do. But yeah, with the shootouts, I kind of wish they went for more of the style of the first film, where it was more tactical and less like, oh, just shooting everywhere and all that. But yeah, I still like the film. It's still decent, but yeah, I do have my issues with it. I hope you enjoyed the review of Substitute 3, Winner Takes All. Like, comment, subscribe. Get me up to 300 subscribers at least, so I can port all my stuff over to Odyssey. That'll be great, so I'll have a backup. And Movie Review Next Door